Anybody that's in the design role in infrastructure right now, you have a very exciting future because you're actually becoming more and more rare. Regardless, as we lose people, as lack of interest happens, if you're in it, you have just an extraordinary future because you are just going to be full of opportunities in the next 50 years, without a doubt.
Welcome to the Level Design Podcast, a podcast for architects and engineers who want to thrive in this industry by creating more freedom, fulfillment, and financial security. Join us in uncovering how to restore value and honor to the unique people who choose to be designers and caretakers of our built world, and why it's essential to the future of our society, our industry, and our planet.
So you said about 120 billion dollars in damage and vehicle damage a year due to bad roads. What is that? And then you compare that to other countries who invest in their infrastructure compared to us, and we rank pretty low. Why do you think that is?
Why do we?
What's wrong there? Why is that backwards?
Well, it could be a lot of things. So, how is the road in front of your house paid for? How's that paid for?
I mean, taxpayers, I am assuming.
No. How did that road get paid for in front of your house?
Well, now I don't know.
It's crazy, right? So, it's the cost of your house. So when you purchase that house in America, not in new development, we're talking the original downtowns may have been built, but mostly by developers. So they develop it and they build the infrastructure and they build it on their own coin, and then they sell lots and houses and buildings, commercial or otherwise, homes. All of that infrastructure gets passed on to the price of the sale of per unit. So when you buy a home or you buy a commercial property, that value that is passed into that cost of the sale. So let's say a home today, somewhere between $40,000 to $70,000 of that home is the infrastructure in front of your
around it.
home.
Oh,
and you're financing it. And you're financing it.
Right.
Right.
That actually makes a lot of sense then.
Right. Okay. So you purchase that road, right?
Yeah.
And you're financing it. The question
you always say that you own, every individual in the U.S. owns more infrastructure than they do real estate, typically.
Yeah. Than their personal
which
wealth.
is crazy to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. You have more burden as a taxpayer for infrastructure than you do for your personal property on average. Right. I mean, some people, but yeah, think about that. And so, and we're kicking the can all the time as taxpayers going, I don't want to pay anymore for maintaining this thing that I'm financing on my mortgage or whatever. Right. I don't want to pay anymore. I don't want to pay anymore. You mean I get a choice to pay or not pay? Oh, I'm not going to pay, right? As a taxpayer. So that's the conversation we're talking about here. Is wait a minute. A lot of economists will back me up. Some won't. Some will argue, but a taxpayer dollar put into the economy generates more economy. It's not a bad thing to maintain that infrastructure. It creates jobs.
Short-term sacrifice leads to, long-term gain.
If you're a service company, let's say you cut hair or you make pizza, that construction worker or that construction company that got that taxpayer dollar that you gave them is buying your pizza or cutting their hair.
Right.
It creates economy, right? That money's spent over and over. So we look at it odd. And so your question was why are we not taking care? I don't know. Is it entitlement?
Well, it's
Is it
also, I mean, I'm just realizing a lot of this stuff. I don't know this. So if you break that down in a weird way, it's basically if you invest in fixing that pothole out there, then I don't
mhm.
damage my car. I don't have to spend $2,000, $500, whatever on fixing my car. I can spend that on the local pizza joint.
That's
Thus, the
right.
economy, right?
It's a closed system, isn't it? You can travel to other parts of the world and you can see a
Mm-hmm.
poorly maintained infrastructure to a no income or no infrastructure. You try to get from your airport to your resort on the beach, and it takes you 8 hours to get there because of the roads and the congestion, and there's no way to get there, right?
Yeah, I
Well,
see.
imagine and you get there and you're like, wow, look what this costs. Well, that costs that much on the beach, 8 hours away from distribution center
Mm-hmm.
because poor infrastructure. So that poor infrastructure goes through the entire economy, the cost of goods
Yeah.
sold. And so we're enjoying just a
Yeah.
really great life in this country because of our infrastructure, which we feel entitled
Right.
to, and therefore we're not maintaining because we just think it's a given.
Yep.
And it's declining rapidly. And we had conversations about, well, if you let it decline, it costs more to maintain. It costs half as much to
Right.
maintain infrastructure in a good condition. If it's a poor condition, which is where we're at, it costs twice as much to maintain it.
Yeah. So we're headed towards a pretty serious breaking point
We're
at
we're
some
already
point.
there. Yeah, we're kind of already there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, there's all these problems to be solved
Mhm.
in the infrastructure, in our infrastructure, and who okay, so who solves those problems and how are they getting paid to solve those problems and what's wrong with that?
As far as why is it broken or why is this happening? What's wrong is
Yeah, like okay, if we want to solve all these problems, because at
Mhm.
scale, and I was wrapping my brain around this, I'm like, well, maybe just one little example like I pulled doesn't really make that big of a difference. But if you scale that and everything is impacted by poor infrastructure, it's a huge hit over time. So
Yeah.
if we're gonna fix that, well, we
Mhm.
need money and energy and investment going into those problems, and then we need the right people, and we need to pay them well, and we need to take care of them. And so
Mhm.
who pays them? What's broken about that? Where are we headed? What direction is that going in?
Mhm. Currently, the direction is an extremely high burden, taxpayer burden, because we're not choosing to vote for these infrastructure bills so that you can go up to the Fed level and you can watch that infrastructure bill was really a political move in a lot of ways. It was bipartisan, but it was still very political. And it's unfortunate because that's a basic government service. That's what we ask. That's the reason we have government is to take care of basic government services for us. And here it's a
Right.
political football. The health of the country and the health of our well-being, our clean water, clean environment, our transportation for affordable goods, and even our social standpoint, what we choose in this country to what we enjoy relies on transportation and infrastructure, and yet it's a political football. And it's you look at maybe other entities, we might be at the bottom of our infrastructure investment compared to other countries across our world. And it's very shocking
Right.
to me that we're doing that. We're 10 times less investment than China is on infrastructure. 10 times less investment than China. So
Damn.
one would say, are we going to remain competitive if more and more of our money is spent on cost of goods because our transportation system's failing?
Yeah.
That's our trend. Are we going to be competitive in the world? And if we're not competitive, what does that mean? What
Right.
happens to us when we're not competitive? When your
It's
hamburger or your food or your lettuce is now 5 times more expensive than it is today.
yeah.
And
That's the
yeah,
connection that people don't realize is coming.
that's the connection.
And infrastructure is a huge part of that because it's like the backbone of our country. It's something we've always been really strong in and has separated us from a lot of other countries in the world, and we're just losing it slowly but surely. And you need that. I think if I'm like the big domino is really the investment part. We got to like care about it. We have to want to pay for that and be proud to pay for that, because it
Mm-hmm.
leads to all these other things. And the other side of that is, well, if that industry is being slowly neglected, then you're losing professionals. And if it takes 5+ years to, train and become a professional civil engineer, architect, then you're not going to have people going into that field, and then we're just totally screwed.
We've lost respect for the infrastructure. We're lost respect for, or maybe we just don't understand it anymore. That's why we're doing
Yeah.
this podcast, right? We're just trying to get informed again.
Yeah.
Both us, this podcast directed towards engineers and designers in the industry, but also hopefully we're having other people listen. But the question is, if the society in general in the United States doesn't care or respect and thinks it's somebody else's problem, and that's where we're at, that's basically where we're at. I had an individual paid by the state, a young woman paid by the state, came to me and said, "Hey, look, I am getting STEM students into engineering, and I've been doing it for 5 years at the middle school and high school. And in that 5 years, I've only had one person say they were interested in civil engineering. All of the students want to go to electrical and mechanical, which is computers and those things, which is highly competitive internationally. And we're losing our edge on that already, or have been. But really, one person, one STEM student in 5 years even goes,
Jeez.
and she asked me, she goes, "What is civil engineering?" And this is somebody that's yearning for understanding, but really is being paid by to get students excited about engineering and design. And nobody's even aware of infrastructure and the need. And then you're showing a slide about the median income for civil engineering reflects that lack of value and that lack of interest in our society.
Yeah.
Very
And
low paid.
just and this is civil engineering salary in Denver, Colorado, just as a example. 50% median is 77,000.
Yeah.
And that's after like 5 years typically.
Mm-hmm. And remember, this is your lead mind. This is your designer.
Mm.
This is the person leading the maintenance and decision making. That's who these people are. And
Yeah.
you can see they're not being compensated, and they're not going into the industry. We're already in a lack of talent. The baby boomer civil engineers that built this country over the last 50 years are gone.
Right.
They had the knowledge. American Public Works Association's working on trying to, how do we bridge this gap? Because the gap is here today, and the youth are going into the industry. Very few. The last 60 to 70% of graduating engineers in this country are quitting after 5 years, the industry altogether, because they don't
Mm-hmm.
like the work environment, which is,
Okay.
what the Level brand's working on. But wow.
Looking for a new opportunity? Interested in being part of an expanding network of independent engineers and architects who are thinking differently? Level Design Partners is on a mission to create prosperity for design professionals, the industry, and the world using innovative business systems and a culture of collaboration. We believe that traditional education and firm structures want you to be a cog in their machine, depriving you of key skills needed to thrive, thus commoditizing an entire industry in the process. Gain access to skills, tools, and systems by partnering with Level Design Partners. Learn more at leveldesignpartners.com.
Yeah. So I want to just, it's it's pretty easy for us to talk about the quote unquote negatives, and maybe negative isn't the right word. They're just matter of fact. Like, this is where things are kind of headed right now in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
We clearly have plenty of work to do in our infrastructure, and we need people to do it, and we need to pay them better, and we need to fix all that. What are like some positives? What are some, all right, that's the state of the infrastructure and the industry as a professional,
Mm-hmm.
but like what, if I'm an engineer, you're an
Mm-hmm.
engineer, what is exciting, and where's the opportunity? Where's the potential for me?
I think maybe it's me, but I think a lot of us feel like I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
What can I do as a person? And I think this is the exciting part. If I was to ask, let me just ask you just to get a reaction, because I think you don't know. Maybe you do.
Probably not.
On infrastructure, is the cities and counties, how much do they spend on infrastructure, and how much does the federal government pay on infrastructure? State,
So
local. So this would be cities and counties. How much do they pay on
yeah,
infrastructure, and how much does the feds, states do?
I think I have picked this up from our previous conversations, but federal doesn't pay. It's mostly local having to take on that burden.
You're right. 2 times. There's
2 times.
more.
Wow.
2 times. Local governments spend twice as much on infrastructure as feds do. So
Mm,
how's that done? Is you go to your council meetings and your commissioner meetings, and you can actually walk up to the mic and give your
mm-hmm.
support for your staffs that are responsible for infrastructure, and go and get involved. You can get on a committee. They would love to have you join a committee. All those local governments would love to have you because they're not getting enough
Right.
citizen participation. They would love to have you. All you got to do is go in there and talk to your public works person or your infrastructure leader and go, I want to get involved. And you can start affecting
Right.
change right away. So
I feel like I have to say this. I feel that we are all, as a public, distracted, because what's more real and tangible of our future than our infrastructure
mm,
and our roads, and you're reminding me that it really does start on that kind of like local level.
mm-hmm.
What's outside,
Yep.
right in front of your house.
Yep.
And if you give a shit about that, then you can go and actually show face and tell people. But we're distracted. No one, either no one knows how severe the problem is, or what the downsides are, and how much money is going to come out of your pocket because of that, or we're just too focused on all the
Your own
BS that's floating
stuff.
around nowadays,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I will say it's fun. You asked me a question about that. What's promising? Your involvement at these committees or whatever, it's actually quite fun to be involved in a committee. It's not painful. It's actually quite interesting. It's gonna involve your mind, involve you in the world around you, and you're gonna find it very stimulating and fun.
Yeah, I haven't done this, but I can imagine if I was passionate about getting something changed, locally, and I went and I showed
Hmm.
up and I shared my message or whatever, and then 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, whatever, I saw that construction or repair, I would feel pretty awesome about that.
It's fun. It's not tragic. It's fun.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so as an engineer though, I
Uh-huh.
feel like we're slowly easing our way to this answer, but I want to talk about just some positives. Like, I'm an engineer, and I would assume like most people listening to this are at some phase or level of engineer or architect, and they're in a traditional firm. Maybe some of them are on their own, right? They have their own business, their own firm, or they're freelancing, or they're doing some sort of combination, or they're in school, or they're still working their way there in training. What are they at every level? What can they look forward to and kind of focus on? Where do you think that they should consider putting their energy and attention?
I think anybody that's in the design role in infrastructure right now, I would say that you have a very exciting future because you're actually becoming more and more rare. So
Yeah.
there's regardless, as we lose people, as lack of interest happens, if you're in it, you have just an extraordinary future because you are just going to be full of opportunity. So I would say stay in the learning. Look at what makes you happy, the different business structures that make you happy as a designer. It could be in a firm, it could be on your own, it could be as a entrepreneur within the level collaborative. It could be that, which is a firm and an entrepreneur, which is what we offer. All those things, I would say, no matter what, you're going to thrive more and more and more in the next 50 years, without a doubt.
That is a good point, because yeah, with rarity comes increased value and need. These problems aren't going away, they're only growing, and they're going to get more and more in our faces and in
Yep.
our bank accounts. So
Yep.
we're going to be reaching out to people to solve these problems.
I'm super jealous,
and there's
actually, by the
fewer.
way. Yeah, I'm super jealous because when I got out, all these baby boomer engineers were in front of me with 15 more years experience, and I was always the one that couldn't get the job. I had all this experience. I am so jealous of the youth right now. I'm like, man alive, there's nobody in front of you with experience. So the opportunity's huge. Yeah, super
So that's
jealous
good.
of.
That's the other side of the coin that's good to remember. It may not always feel, depending on where you're looking, it may not feel like things are headed in the right direction, but I think if you put your head down and focus, there's a lot of positives in there. And a couple
We've got
years
the
down the
greatest. We got
road.
great infrastructure. We just need to really
Yeah.
get focused on taking care of it. And that's it. We got really, really some of the greatest infrastructure. Let's go take care of it. Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep.
All right, Scott, we got to talk history for a second.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So we're still in this weird phase of not a whole lot's happening, but let's just, stay true to our word and make sure we cover the 70s. So this is the 1670s. And
American
we
infrastructure,
are,
1670s. Yeah.
yeah.
How did
So,
how did we get here? How did we get to the 2024 ocean rising and lack of
yeah,
respect for infrastructure and disconnected from it? How did we get here? Well, we're going to start with history.
slowly,
Yeah.
very slowly and steadily. So I'm not seeing a whole lot. Let's see here. We've got town planning becoming more established, like permanent settlements in the US, communities and towns and villages. We're starting to see like laying out of street public squares and commons, kind of social areas. There's also our first kind of seeing land being allocating for residential and commercial and public use. So I thought that was interesting because it's like, all right, this is actually a real little civilization starting to form. Obviously, mostly eastern coast.
Right.
Virginia, Massachusetts, Bay,
Right.
Maryland.
There's a lot of political upheaval here. So there's back in Europe, there's still these who's taking what territories in Americas. A lot of going on there. England and I believe France finally come to an agreement on not collaborating, not being at war with each other, but they gang up on, I believe, the Dutch. So England and France are now friends in this era, and not going after the Dutch. So Spain's still kind of out. There's a lot of territories getting figured out in the Americas, and slave trades getting active. So things are getting built with the slaves in the United States, early United States, the 1670s. Trade's getting robust. 1670s is when England, America's, you can't use any other ships than England for your goods. So tobacco and all of sugar and things that are starting to get made in Americas can only be used and taxed through English ships back to Europe. So trade routes are starting to get in. England is starting to influence how things are done in the United States. And so there's England, I think 1670s declares Catholicism as their official religion. So
Wow.
this is a while ago. We've been around, the United States has been around a while. If you think about it, this is when England says Catholicism is the only religion.
That's wild.
That's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
So, and primarily infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to get trade. Now there's starting to be farms. Now there's starting to be entrepreneurism. There is beginnings of urbanism. Still sewage in the rivers, buckets in the rivers. Not a lot of stone masonry, just primarily wood construction. And the Indians the indigenous people start getting pushed out.
There's conflict there for sure.
Yeah. So a lot of cruel things are starting to happen. Now there's starting to be hangings. There isn't a real good court system yet. So people are being hung for not believing in things. It's pretty messy right now in the United States.
Yeah.
Pretty messy.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much the 70s right there. It's just summed up in a nutshell.
70s,
It's not 1670s, not a great time still. Things are kind of still forming. Got a few more episodes and then we'll be in the 1700s, which is exciting. Some big things happening in there. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, Miles.
Scott. Thank you. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. If you found value in this episode, support us by sharing it with someone or leaving a review. In upcoming episodes, we'll discuss the realities of the industry today and what the future may look like. It's our belief that positive changes for architects and engineers is not the obligation of the industry, but rather a choice you make to reimagine how we work together. We invite you to join us in creating a world in which design professionals thrive. Learn about our mission and get involved by following us wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribing to our newsletter at leveldesignpartners.com.